Hello, everybody. Wayne Motts from the National Civil War Museum up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, with my good friend, author extraordinaire, licensed guide, Battle of Gettysburg podcast. Holy cow, he's got many titles. Jim Hessler. And we're out on the first day's battlefield for my first episode for the National Civil War Museum of Touring Tuesday Civil War Adventures. And we could do a tour, and we are going to do them from just about anywhere. But the Civil War Museum being close to Gettysburg, Jim and I, licensed guides, we're starting right here. And we're starting here on the first day at the Battle of Gettysburg. Jim, I appreciate you coming out and being with us.
No, Wayne, thanks for the invite as always, and always happy to support my friends at the National Civil War Museum. So thank you for having me.
I super appreciate it. We got some wind out here along with other
Along
things,
the bus.
so we're going to in a bus. So we're going to deal with it. But Jim, for our first episode of Touring Tuesday Civil War Adventures, we picked July 1st. You've written brand new on the first day. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Where are we for the viewers?
So where are we? You can hopefully see behind Wayne and I right now the iconic Eternal Peace Light Memorial up on what we know on the battlefield as Oak Hill. Immediately behind Wayne would be the monument of the 17th Pennsylvania Cavalry. And at the time of the battle in July of 1863, Wayne and I are standing on what would have been the John and Mary Forney farm. So John Forney, Gettysburg resident, his wife Mary, they had a young daughter, fairly prosperous farmer. This was a more than 100-acre farm at the time of the battle. And about where Wayne and I are standing, I think, would have been a relatively large two-story house.
Yeah, big farmhouse.
Yeah, you know, so these were not hard scrabble people. The Forneys were relatively prosperous, and behind the camera position would have been the barns. So Wayne, this would be the site, the relative stepping off that I know we're going to talk about, the attack of Alfred Iverson's brigade on the afternoon of July 1st.
So maybe to help the viewers, we've got the peace light in the background in our iconic Gettysburg battlefield bus. I mean, obviously, we've got to have tours here. Why don't we pan around? We've got our good friend and board member and helper, Mike, behind the camera. So why don't we take a look at all this and take a look at where we're at. So he's panning out. And where are we at, Jim? We've got the line for the Union Army directly across from us, right?
Yes, over on Oak Ridge.
Okay. And the town of Gettysburg in the background. We've got, what are we calling these woods? Will's Wine, what are we calling them?
I'm calling
Railroad woods?
I'm calling them the woods because because to Wayne's point, there's some discrepancy. Sometimes we say Sheeds Woods, Railroad Woods, and I know some people don't like all of those names.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different names for that wood line, but that's the wood line on McPherson's Ridge, right? And then we come all the way around and we go down to the large castle-like monument, 6th New York Cavalry, which are to some of the units for John Buford's cavalry division that was here on July 1st, 1860.
And you know, I often point out to people, although Buford's got monuments here, his troops were not really positioned here during the fighting, because it can be confusing to people.
Yeah. So on July 1st, 1863, let's take everybody through it, Jim. We're standing right here where the Forney farm was. We got the peace light. I'll switch around because onto this side, we got the peace light right over here. And why don't we give a few minutes recap? So this fight is going to take place afternoon on July 1st, just south, just to the right of the view with the viewers there. What happened at the beginning there to kind of set us up for this?
Yeah, okay, so let's kind of set the stage for this. As Wayne said, and as we were pointing over to McPherson's Ridge a moment ago, there would have been, of course, fighting along McPherson's Ridge during the morning of July 1st, and as the Union Army's 1st Corps was realigning, strengthening their position during the late morning, early afternoon of the 1st, they would have extended their right flank over onto Oak Ridge, the position and the monuments behind us. So that's sort of, Wayne, what's going on for the Army of the Potomac. Over here, though, on Oak Hill, where the peace light is, Robert Rhodes's division of Richard Ewell's 2nd Corps, they had been up north of Gettysburg, and they had been approaching Gettysburg all morning. Richard Ewell initially had orders to either proceed towards Cashtown or Gettysburg as the situation might dictate, but as Rhodes and Ewell were approaching Gettysburg and they could hear the sounds of gunfire and also a message from A.P. Hill indicating that Hill had moved on to Gettysburg, Rhodes and Ewell came up and occupied Oak Hill, where the Peace Light Memorial is. Ewell generally had orders not to bring on a general engagement, but, and this is one of the reasons why I like the view on this part of the of the field, because from Oak Hill, looking down, they could see an opportunity to strike the enemy, the Union Army First Corps, in flank. And so now Ewell and Rhodes are going to start preparing to make an assault on the enemy's position.
Yeah, and we should say too, sometimes the camera's going into the sunlight. We are out here in the morning, so we hope that's not too annoying for everyone here. Jim, the ground, this would have been a field right behind you, right off to the right of where the viewers are, and we know there were crops out here. And would you say that Oak Hill open on the south slope of it, where we're at now, or what's the terrain here?
Yeah, you know, to both of those points, we know the Forneys had several orchards out here.
Yeah.
Now, if I do recall correctly, the field that we're in, because of course we would be standing literally where the house was,
right.
This immediate field would have had grass and things of that nature, and some orchards stretching out over towards Oak Ridge. But where the peace light is, to your point, yes, this south slope was generally believed to have been cleared and open at the time of the battle. And so one of the things Rhodes will do is he starts aligning his division up here and preparing for battle, is he is going to place some of the divisional artillery along the south slope of the hill, in some cases facing this direction to face off against Union artillery that is redeploying along the Chambersburg Pike.
Okay,
so good artillery, good fields of fire, good observation.
And maybe we should mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I've got the numbers pretty close, but Rhodes's division, which has 5 brigades of infantry here, massive, huge. I mean, it's like an 8,000 man division, isn't it? I mean, it's like 7,900 guys.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. I usually go around $7,000, but it's big.
Okay.
It's big. It's big people, big.
It's got a lot of people. And then you come over here, and you've got Robinson's division, the 2 brigades that we're going to talk about when we get over on the Union side to meet this attack. Is only like 3,000 people or something, right?
Yeah.
So the Confederates not only have a position advantage, they've got a numerical advantage. Right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, that's one of the things I often talk about when I'm setting up this part of the attack on tours, because the position advantage that you just mentioned, you know, if you think about it, so the First Corps at that point in the day is now commanded by Abner Doubleday, since John Reynolds had been killed that morning.
Sure, right.
Richard Ewell is coming in with a great opportunity right now to strike in the flank while A.P. Hill is going to renew his attacks from the west. So I want to get those hand motions on camera, folks. Flank, strike from the flank, while A.P. Hill is coming in from the west. So you're right, it's a great potential positional advantage here if Rhodes and Ewell can take advantage of it.
And so the fighting you mentioned in the afternoon, this is definitely going to be afternoon, and we should mention there, and we're not going to cover every single attack.
Right.
There's multiple attacks involved in this from the afternoon of July 1st until 4 o'clock when the troops are pushed off here. This is what we're in the position, right, Jim, that Iverson and his North Carolina brigade would have been. This is like would have been where he would have been.
Yeah.
Pretty close, or is it not?
So the attack of Iverson's brigade, one of the most disastrous and tragic of the Battle of Gettysburg. Iverson, when he came into position as one of the brigades in Robert Rhodes's division, Iverson probably initially came in a couple hundred yards behind Wayne in that direction. But Iverson says in his report that one of the orders he received from General Rhodes was to move forward slowly to support some of the artillery, which again I think would be some of Carter's artillery on the south slope of Oak Hill. Okay. So yes, eventually, to answer your question, the brigade attack is going to move through the Forney property where we are right now.
And Mike behind the camera, and I'll just switch sides quickly with you. You can see, if you look closely, how the ground dips way down and goes into the middle of this open field, which would have been the line for Iverson. And the Union line is out in the wood line that's off to the right there. So the question is, when the Confederates get over there, right, they're not sure exactly where that line is.
Exactly. That's right. I mean, I think, and I often say this, Certainly Rhodes says there's no doubt they know Union forces are over there.
Yeah, they know
The question is, to your point, the question is, do they know the strength of the Union forces? Do they know where the Union line ends? And things of that nature. Because, you know, if we look over there today, we see nice tall monuments and cars and buses driving along the top of the ridge. But by most accounts, there was a stone wall running along the ridge, and probably Robinson's Federal troops were probably more on the other side of that slope. So yeah, they know enemy troops are there, but they don't know in what strength and again where that line kind of ends, and that's going to prove to be disastrous for Iverson.
Now, when Iverson goes forward here on the afternoon of July 1st, he's supposed to coordinate all of this. It's Rhodes.
Yeah,
It's all supposed to
yeah.
be coordinated, and we know it really isn't. Unfortunately, for the Confederates, fortunately for the Union,
Yeah.
they fight piecemeal. But Jim, and I guess, and I'm going to throw this out to you, and we didn't talk about this in advance, but do you think Iverson, there's a big controversy whether or not he had people in front of him, he didn't have skirmishers.
Yeah,
What's your thought? What's your belief of that? When he goes forward, does he have people out in front that are doing this?
You know what I always like to say, Wayne? It's complicated,
Okay,
right?
all right.
So there's no doubt I think there's a lot of confusion going on. And people blame Iverson for all of this. I would actually say the buck goes at least a little bit higher to Rhodes. Right, Rhodes, the division commander. You know, Iverson, I think Iverson talks about in his report to the effect of that I was ordered by General Rhodes, again, to push out skirmishers in part to support this battery.
Right.
But then at some point, Rhodes changed his mind, and Rhodes said, no, we're going to take this a step further, and we are going to attack the enemy on Oak Ridge. Now, Rhodes says in his report he thought the enemy was coming out to attack him, and therefore he was counterattacking. And so with all of this kind of going on, a change of plans, you know, first you're supporting artillery, then you're moving forward, now you're going to be part of this big attack. I do think there's some confusion there, and what we'll talk about when we step off, I think the speed and the surprise with which Iverson realizes he needs to go forward, I think will probably prevent him from, deploying skirmishers.
And because he says in his report that he's supposed to do that. He's supposed to follow it, but then it becomes a change, right?
Exactly.
So this is an issue. So now, folks, we could, and if we had 3 hours with you, we
don't. I thought this was 3 hours, folks.
We'd walk the entire length of this. If you want to come out here and walk on this ground, you can. Just be mindful of the park resource and the crops. And the things that are growing out here. Winter is certainly the best time probably to come out here. We're out here on a great fall day where the weather's really nice. But we're going to leave this attack for Iverson. We've got, as Jim said, we've got him sort of moving off across here. And then we're going to circle around. We're going to go around the other side and look at Robinson's Union division as they would have met that assault. Now, there are other brigades involved in this attack. Edward O'Neill's brigade, of course, Junius Daniel, that's behind where the viewers are, and Stephen Ramser's brigade held in reserve. George Dole's down over the hillside that's here. So there's multiple things going on here, and we're only for Touring Tuesday today. We're only talking about one, basically, of this. Now, Jim, anything else you want to recap here?
A couple things if we've got a minute. You know, again to your point with these other brigades. Those other brigades that Wayne mentioned are important because, again, this is supposed to be a division level coordinated attack by Rhodes. And two of the names that Wayne mentioned in particular are important because as Iverson, Wayne, I'm going to have you be Iverson for a minute. As Iverson eventually is ordered to step off and make that attack, kind of over here, don't move too far, I'm going to be Colonel O'Neill's brigade. And the thinking is that O'Neill pushing against Oak Ridge like this and Iverson like that are more or less supposed to go in at the same time and be coordinated. But of course, things are going to break down in part of this confusion we talked about. And most historians think O'Neill goes in first, gets pushed back, and exposes Iverson. So that's O'Neill, but also too from Iverson's perspective, he is also told Daniel will be coming up behind you and support you. So none of this is really going to play out the way Rhodes thinks, but those are important components of the attack, and ultimately the lack of coordination is one of the reasons why it fails so spectacularly.
And if you're in the Union forces, if you're able to repulse O'Neill first, you can turn around and go up against and meet this other threat.
Which is what most people think happens.
That's here. But you've really got to come out and look at the ground. Hopefully the video will make it clear that the ground, we're up on a nice high little ridge right here where we're at. And when you're Iverson off to the right of this frame, you're going down into that really low area of ground.
You know, you and I, we've done Pickett's Charge so many times on the battlefield. This is very much a mini Pickett's Charge. It's about a third of the distance, but to your point, it's the same rolling Gettysburg, Pennsylvania countryside, and it makes a difference.
Well, Jim, thank you for this. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take Mike and Jim, and we're going to take you over to the other side, and we're going to pick up with Iverson where the Union Army is meeting them on July 1st. So stay tuned. We just moved in position, and Mike has got the camera shooting down toward the town. So we're on Oak Ridge. We're on the east side of Oak Ridge, and we're standing in a small simulated orchard that would have been here. And we wanted to come down here because we want to show everybody the change in position. So we just left where Iverson is moving. We've got him on the move. And we're coming over here to Oak Ridge, and we're along the area where the 2nd Division of the 1st Corps would have been located.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this was Wayne's idea to kind of stand over here, but it's a great idea because hopefully it'll give you all the perspective as John Robinson's division of the 1st Corps was extending their line that afternoon here along Oak Ridge. This reverse slope hopefully will give you all a better impression of why it was possible to hide Union troops here and make Rhodes and Iverson unaware of the strength and the positioning of all of it. Right? So you get a good sense. Folks, this is why you got to come out to the battlefield, right? Because if you look at this on maps in a book, you don't understand. Why couldn't these guys see those guys and that sort of thing? You got to come out onto the battlefield, and the terrain here speaks to that perfectly.
So we're hoping for those of you that aren't really able to get out here or get out here anytime soon, this will give you at least some indication as to what this looked like. And I'll kind of swing around a little bit over to here. So here we are, and we're swinging around to the position where we're at. And Jim, the Union troops are probably back here, right? They're probably here on the backside.
Yeah. So when Division Commander Robinson had received orders from Acting Corps Commander Doubleday to reinforce this position, Robinson was probably using the swale on this side of the hill to kind of push his troops up through the seminary area and come up out here. And yes, he would have deployed initially Brigadier General Henry Baxter's brigade up along this side of the ridge. Now, I think as we've mentioned, you know, it's a nice stacked improved stone wall today. The stone wall that was described as being here during the battle would have been low, disintegrating, in much more disrepair than what you're looking at right now.
Yeah. So there's a wall here, folks, but it probably doesn't look exactly like this. Now, we wanted to change this position. Now we can leave here.
Yeah.
And we're going to walk up to the top of the ridge line. And so when the Union troops move, they can come up to the top of the ridge line pretty much like we're going to do right now. Except we're going to walk through a little opening. We're not going over the wall to where this is. But Jim, let's take a walk. Mike can follow us with the camera. And let's talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about the Confederate troops, Alfred Iverson. And I know you want to say some more about him up there. But what about some of the troops that are here? So John Robinson, I like him.
I know you do,
He's a Binghamton, New York native. He went to West Point, and he actually he had to leave West Point. He never graduated. He got a direct commission in the service and went into the 5th U.S. Infantry Regiment, fought in the Mexican War, got a really long record in the U.S. Army. He gets a volunteer command, and here in the Battle of Gettysburg, he's a brigadier general commanding the 2nd Division of the 1st Union Army Corps. He'll be badly wounded, lose a leg at the Battle of Laurel Hill in 1864, and he'll be a recipient of the Medal of Honor here. So he got an outstanding record. He's got 2 brigades, Gabriel Paul, West Point graduate, and I know you like Baxter. So Henry Baxter is the other one.
You know, I like Baxter because, of course, everyone. Let's carefully cross
don't be another
the avenue.
Out here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always look both ways,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
Even when it, so anyways, yes, I do like Baxter, thanks. So the reason I like Baxter is because everyone often comes out here and they talk about the attacking force under Iverson. I mean, Wayne, when was the last time you were on a battlefield tour where somebody mentioned Brigadier General Henry Baxter, right? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But he's in his early 40s. He is from Michigan. He's a former merchant from Michigan. And the reason I primarily like Baxter is because this is a guy who is going to be wounded 4 times during the course of the American Civil War. And what does that tell you? What does that tell me? When I see a guy who was wounded multiple times, that tells me it's a guy who's on the front lines. And not, you know, as some other officers did, not a guy who's shirking behind the lines. So Baxter's brigade is going to be the one that primarily meets Iverson out here on Oak Ridge. Baxter's got about 1,400 men or so, regiments from Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, so kind of a mixed brigade. The numbers are relatively equal to the numbers coming across the field under Iverson, but as we know, numbers don't always tell the whole story.
Right. And so when the troops come up here to the top of the ridge while Iverson's moving, and Mike can kind of pan around just to take a look at the field, we stood up on the, let me just come all the way out here, up to the far right, all the way up in the distance where the monument is, the 17th Pennsylvania Cavalry. This is where Jim and I first stood on tour. And by the way, we're over here laughing and we're talking, and I'm throwing Jim in these things. Folks, we don't script these. Wayne Motch did not write the
That's
script.
right. That's right. We don't script, folks.
So,
right?
so if we're laughing about it, it's because we didn't know.
It's improv, baby. Yeah.
When we actually got out here, but we've been guiding long enough. We think we know exactly where we want to come and what we want to do. But we're just for your pleasure. This is what we're doing.
Yep. We're on a bloody battlefield for your viewing pleasure. That's right.
So there is some humor regarding this thing here, but. Obviously, on July 1st, this is serious stuff.
This is ugly stuff.
You've got Baxter's men coming up here. They're going to pour into this infantry volley into Iverson. And Jim, you and I kind of talked off camera.
Yeah.
We didn't cover a little bit at the beginning, so why don't you talk a little bit about Iverson?
Yeah.
He's a character worth knowing about.
He is. I'd be happy to. So, Alfred Iverson, he's a Georgia native. He is 34 years old at the Battle of Gettysburg. As you know, and probably others know, the one image of him that was in circulation for many, many years was of him as an old man, and people often thought Iverson was old during the Civil War. But he's 34 years old at the Battle of Gettysburg. His father, Alfred Iverson Sr., was a prominent politician and friend of Jefferson Davis. And I think it's quite likely that the name Iverson is one of the reasons why young Iverson is getting enabled and elevated through the Army of Northern Virginia. Now, long story short, young Iverson, he had Mexican War experience. He had experience at lower levels. He had taken command of this brigade after Garland had been killed at the Battle of South Mountain.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The problem is, Iverson is a Georgian, and even though he had come up through this particular brigade, he is put in command of the brigade, which is 4 North Carolina regiments. And the North Carolinians are already kind of prickly over the idea of having outsiders lead them in combat. And so because of that, they're not happy to see the Georgian Iverson elevated to command of the brigade. Now, to make a really long story short, Iverson seems to be a strict disciplinarian and does some things that do not necessarily endear him to the men of the brigade. At the Battle of Chancellorsville, Iverson's brigade had seen heavy action. Iverson might have been mildly wounded at one point, but also during Chancellorsville at one point, instead of being in front of the brigade, he had gone back to quote unquote look for support, which is a theme that's going to play out again here July 1st at Gettysburg. So long story short, it seems to be kind of, although a battle-hardened brigade, because of the command issues, they seem to be demoralized coming in here to Gettysburg. It's 4 North Carolina regiments of, again, slightly less than 1,400 guys making that move across
and
the field.
right in front of your view.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Now, you always learn something here. So now I just learned something. So I knew Iverson had got a commission. He'd fought in the Mexican War, but then he got a direct commission in the service like in the 1850s, right? And of course, who is the Secretary of War? Jefferson Davis. So you just said, I didn't realize. So you said Iverson's father is a friend of Jefferson Davis's, and obviously as a senator, it makes sense. So,
makes a difference.
So here's a guy that even though he's a Georgian, he did have some previous pre-war combat experience, and obviously had been a regular Army soldier, so it probably gives him here. But you know, you gotta be. If you're not a North Carolinian, you're probably on the outside of this. And so that's a problem.
You know, and I don't think he's the drunken, incompetent boob he's always made out to be, but he clearly is wrong guy, wrong place, wrong time out here on July 1st.
And Jim, we should say we're going to make this walk, but we should say this. And would you like to address now? Iverson is not with this brigade when it goes forward, right?
Yeah.
And that's an issue, right? I mean, he should have. I mean, you would think as a brigade commander, but it appears from his report that he sees. He says he sees these things, and it's like he's not with them. Is that right?
And that's definitely one of the things that will be and should be held against him. On July 1st at Gettysburg. I mentioned the Chancellorsville example because maybe we sort of have a modus operandi going on here. But when his men get the orders to attack, now, as we said before, there's some confusion. What he says in his report is that I was told O'Neill was going to attack at the same time. I went over to see when that would occur, and I found O'Neill was already in motion. So I think one of the things Iverson does is then he has to quickly get the guys in motion, as Wayne said before, kind of stepping off from the ridge line on the horizon where we were standing before. But as he steps up, as the brigade steps off, to your point, Wayne, Iverson basically says to the guys, give them hell, and then they go forward while he stays behind. He will say in his after-action report to the effect of, I stayed behind, and to send multiple inquiries to General Daniel for support to come on up in my rear. So it's not like he's inactive. I don't think he was drunk behind a log like some of his critics made him out to be later, but a brigade commander, combat should be leading, and he clearly is not.
Okay. So we want to leave here and we want to walk out to the 88th Pennsylvania, which is one of the units that is actually part of this attack for July 1st, 1863. We got anything else you want to add from here, Jim?
No, not really. Just, you know, as we walk out there, of course, Baxter's men, some of them right afterwards, that is, they were up here on the ridge watching Iverson's. I mean, folks, get a good view of how open that ground is. And Baxter's men initially talked about basically just, you know, cocking the triggers and waiting for these guys to come across and unleash the volleys on them. So, you know, as you guys on the camera are looking in that direction, try to get that sense of what an inviting target Iverson's guys are.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's take a walk. We got to be careful going through here.
Yes.
Maybe we'll walk along here a little bit and then get over and make our, just so you see portion of the Union line, which is right over here, because Jim's been talking about it and we didn't show where it was.
Well.
But here's portion of the Union line, and right off to the left of the screen, we've got the 88th Pennsylvania, which has the Eagle. So that's their main memorial here. Along where Oak Ridge is. General Robinson is right behind them on statue. And we'll kind of come right up here and then walk down the pathway.
And a lot of this scruffy undergrowth to our right, we should probably point out to people, in all likelihood was not here.
So we have the 12th Massachusetts right off here to the left of your screen. It's all Oak Ridge, everybody. And then we have a nice mode path for us to walk through to get over to where the 88th is. So the distance of this, these troops are going to come up here and then push around and go right forward to where we're at.
Yeah.
And this would be toward the end of the action after they fired into these men?
Yes, this advance marker would essentially be at the end of the action. You know, up to that point, Wayne, we should point out to people too, one of the problems now with Iverson's alignment is he's coming towards us. Now, Mike, if we can see the Mummersburg Road with the cars moving on it right now in the background, Iverson probably thought that coming more or less on a line with his left, more or less aligned at the Mummersburg Road, Iverson probably thought he would quickly connect with O'Neill's brigade, and that would provide the coverage on Iverson's left. Yeah, but because of the breakdown between Iverson and O'Neill, that doesn't happen. So what I just want to get a sense for people here, I'm going to kind of pivot. I want to get the sense is Iverson's guys are coming across the field. They're probably coming more like this. And so their left, as they come across that field, is getting farther and farther away from the Mummersburg Road. And I think, Wayne, you mentioned it at the first stop. One of the things this will allow Baxter's men to do after they dispatch O'Neill's brigade over here, some of Baxter's guys can swing out of the Union Works and fire into Iverson's left.
Yeah. So the field that's right over here behind us, the left of Iverson, is probably out over toward where the Mummersburg Road is located. It's certainly not over the road. And then the line comes straight through the low ground that's right over here, and probably the right of it is probably up on this little hill that's right over here. This marker, put here in 1883,
shadow.
Just it talks about what you talked about that's here, which is the 88th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment. So why don't you, these guys rush out here. I'm going to get over here close to them because I'm not wearing a microphone, so I'm going to get closer, a little closer to you. But these guys rush out here and capture flags. I mean, they get several of the flags of these, right? So this is a pretty, now I don't know if, I guess they've already surrendered because Iverson talks about that, right?
Yeah, so what happens is Iverson's guys, and you can maybe behind the monument get a sense of a little bit of a dip, again, almost a little gully, a ravine. Some accounts refer to it as they come across. But as Iverson's guys approach this point, we're a couple hundred yards away from the Union Works on Oak Ridge. Baxter gives the orders, let them have it, boys. And Baxter's men would have fired a volley into Iverson's men. Some of the front ranks, literally, as you know from the accounts, go down in line with just bullets in the head and guys just falling literally. So one guy said later, as perfectly as if on dress parade. They just go down. So Iverson's men are going down in the front ranks. The rest of them are going to go to ground. And yes, so what happens is Baxter sees an opportunity and he orders his men, give them the steel, boys. And men like the 88th Pennsylvania rush out from the works to about this point. And it's at about this point where they start scooping up Iverson's wounded and survivors as prisoners.
One of the soldiers in the 88th Pennsylvania is a man named Edward Gilligan.
Yeah.
And Gilligan got the Medal of Honor for capturing one of Iverson's flags here. And a sword that was presented to Gilligan in March of 1865 when he's an officer is at the National Civil War Museum. So we have a sword in our collection that belonged to Gilligan. And the Medal of Honor that Gilligan got for his action here on July 1st, 1863 is in the National Park Service's collection, donated National Park Service. And he got that in the 1890s. And it's an interesting story that I want to quickly tell is that the survivors of the 88th wrote him, asked him to provide an account for their regimental history, and then they submitted it to the War Department to get him the Medal of Honor. So he really didn't know that he didn't try to campaign to get the medal, as so many people often did at the time of the Civil War. So Gilligan is awarded this Medal of Honor for action here, and he says the flag was never in his hands. He says basically somebody's knocked down, the color bearer's knocked down, and the flag is taken off the battlefield. But he gets the award of the Medal of Honor, which is now donated to the Gettysburg National Military Park for this action in capturing flags here on July 1st. Devastating for Iverson to see this. I mean, the casualties here, right, Jim, are tremendous for Iverson's brigade. I mean, they're really heavy.
The problem, too, from Iverson's perspective is, as we said earlier, he's watching from behind, and he writes a very unfortunate passage in his report, something to the effect of, when I saw my men go down, I originally thought they had disgraced me by surrendering. Just not a good look. Rhodes mentions that, too, in his report, that an unfortunate comment by Iverson. Iverson would later say, well, when I realized that line actually marked my killed and wounded, except for a few, who disgracefully waved the white flag, it's just not a good moment for Iverson, kind of writing about the disgrace to him as his men are going down here in the field.
And Farmer Forney, there's going to be dead men. This place is known, it's become known as Iverson's Pits in this lower area right here. I mean, Farmer Forney has to deal with dead Confederates out here for like many years.
He does. He does.
Yeah.
So there's a story on that Forney, in later years, the son of one of the North Carolina officers who had been wounded out here, Forney is taking the son around the battlefield, and Forney, to your point, is showing the son these burial pits where Iverson's men had originally been buried on the field, but what were exhumed. And the pits, as you said, had become known as Iverson's pits. Now, if you put any stock into the accuracy of the Elliott map, what we would call Iverson's pits is probably a little bit over here to our left, kind of somewhat opposite the observation tower.
Actually, not in the lower area.
Let me clarify that. I don't mean up here by the tower, but kind of across from the tower.
Okay.
So kind of probably
in the field that's directly in front of the building
exactly
that Mike is shooting right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now again, I emphasized if you accept the accuracy of the Elliott map, that's where those trenches would be. I say that only because a number of years ago I had Forney descendants on a tour and told them the story about that, and they kind of said, well, you know, Grandma always said the pits were all the way over here. So a lot of, as often happen, you know, you have documented history sometimes clashing with oral history.
And then the guides are, you know, I was been told always that it's in this lower piece of ground out here.
Well,
maybe it isn't. Maybe it's over here.
Well, the idea, I'm trying to directionally over here, but the idea was that the pits were behind Iverson's line. So if Iverson went to ground over here, you are talking somewhere over here. Over here, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. You know, that's really over there, kind of opposite the tower.
Now we focused the Touring Tuesday episode today on Iverson's brigade, although we've spent time on the Union soldiers here, as we should, and we should say, Jim, that these two brigades under Gabriel Paul and Henry Baxter for John Robinson, these guys didn't get off scot-free. I mean, they took some heavy casualties among the Union troops that are over here. So, and then later on in the afternoon, Rhodes brings in extra troops. His reserve brigade, which is Stephen Ramseur, brings him in, and this area is pushed off of here. The Union Army is basically pushed off here. So after July 1st, after 4 o'clock, everything we're standing on, right, is basically a Confederate possession.
Yeah, that's right. And so, you know, the fight on Oak Ridge becomes really sort of a temporary delaying action. Temporarily delaying the Confederates from pushing towards town, but in the big scheme of things, you know, not much. You know, I do want to point out, because I know you're a Robinson fan, remember Robinson writes Meade afterwards and basically sort of chastises commanding General Meade for, in Robinson's view, not giving his men enough credit for the standout here.
Yeah, and this is pretty interesting because I think Robinson, I forget the exact date that he gets out of West Point, but he's like at West Point right around the time Meade is. So I wonder, I'd have to look it up whether he actually got there right before Meade did, but he's probably known Meade for, you know, a while being in the regular army. So that's an interesting, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. So, Jim, is there any other thing we want to wrap up? We've had a great fall day out here.
Yeah, we have.
Walking on this. Anything else you'd like to point out here?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we summed it up, the heavy casualties on both sides, and that Iverson's attack in particular is remembered as one of the most disastrous at the Battle of Gettysburg. Iverson was blamed afterwards by enemies for, as we said, for being drunk, for not being with his troops, and things of that nature. But I would, as we said, I would pin a lot of this on Division Commander Rhodes for the faulty lack of coordination.
I want to swing over here and bring Mike with us a little bit, just so we can point out before we go exactly where we're at. Right over here is the Peace-Site Memorial that's here. Obviously, we can swing around a little bit, Mike, and do the Oak Ridge Tower, so everybody can kind of see. If you want to come out here, you certainly can come out here on the mode path. You can park here, you can walk around, and you can see the area that Jim and I covered here. I just want to say on behalf of the Civil War Museum, I want to thank Jim for being out here with us. I want to thank Mike for operating behind the camera for this, our first episode of Touring Tuesday on the Gettysburg National Military Park battlefield. And we'll be doing more Touring Tuesdays at Gettysburg, but we're going to do them elsewhere at a lot of other places. I want to thank Jim. If you are not following Jim at the Battle of Gettysburg podcast, get over there. You can follow it on multiple platforms.
And on
The Battle of
YouTube, you got it.
The Battle of Gettysburg
Yeah.
podcast. The James Hessler, you've got a Civil War Facebook page. You can follow that along with us. Jim just released a brand new book on Gettysburg, July 1st. Is it Osprey? Osprey.
First Day at Gettysburg by Casemate. Casemate
I'm
Illustrated.
sorry,
Yep.
by Casemate. So you can get Jim's first day book. There are many, many things. So keep up with him, and we really want to thank him for coming out on behalf of the museum. For all of you, we want to say be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, be sure to follow us, and check out all this great social media content for the National Civil War Museum and on the National Civil War Museum's channel. We want to thank all of you for your support. So keep and stay tuned.